Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Goldster PPG, Purpose, Passion, Grit. I'm absolutely thrilled today to be here with Leroy Logan, who is, well, he's a phenomenon. He's a campaigner. He's also an author. He's written this book. I've actually got the hardback. It's now out in paperback, which I'll give you the link to later. Closing Ranks, My Life as a Cop. But Leroy, your life is about so much more than the book, which is fairly recent. So welcome to Goldster.
Yeah, it's great being here, Lucinda. It's it's just like being at home, actually. So, and I love the tree. I love the tree.
Oh, thank you. Well, I thought I'd better get a bit Christmassy.
Yeah.
So tell us, what made you go into the police force? I mean, what year did you join, and what was that impetus?
Yeah, joined in 1983, and in real terms, it was a calling. My life was charted as a research scientist. After getting my degree, I was working at the Royal Free in Hampstead, enjoying it from 1980 to 82, 83. And then, but in 82, I get the calling of policing. It caught me on the blind side. A couple of things. Basically, my boss said to me that, you're good at science, but I just don't think your character fits being a research scientist for the next 30, 40 years. So I said to him, what do you think I should do? And he said, well, your character just seems suited towards policing. And I thought, are you serious? I mean, it was my worst nightmare to even be thought of as a police officer because of my experience in the 60s and 70s with the sus law and all the persecution that went with that. And but at the same time, I was being courted, if that's the right term, by officers from Hampstead Police Station. They used to use our sporting facilities at the Royal Free. So I used to see them in the gym, the pool, the sports hall, etc., and in the bar. And then I didn't know that at the time, but eventually they said they were local cops and, it'd be great to have someone like yourself in the police service. So all this sort of resonated at the same time. And they took me on drive rounds. And I think that's what my boss may have seen me on one of those drive rounds. So, because I was thinking the coincidence, I was thinking I should become a cop. And then these other officers were sort of trying to draw me in, as it were. And I thought, well, give it a go.
And what did your friends and family think when you told them that you were going to stop being a scientist and become a police officer?
Well, this is it. This is the contentious bit. My father saw the science research as a access to medicine. He always wanted me to do medicine. And so that's why thinking of leaving that pathway would really upset him. And then on top of that, he was badly beaten up by officers over a traffic matter in 1982 when I was looking at putting in an application. And it was devastating what they did to him. He was literally beaten black and blue. I left the Royal Free when I got the message that he'd been hospitalized, rushed to the Whittington in Islington. And I walked past him. I didn't even realize it was him. He was so contorted. And it brings back terrible memories. But so how can I explain to him, not only I'm not doing medicine, but I'm joining the ranks of the officers who beat him up over a traffic matter. All right, admittedly, he sued them successfully for excessive force and unlawful arrest, but nevertheless, he was devastated by it. And he found out by default from other officers who came to visit my old address, because I'd moved on at that stage and my own flat in Highbury. And the officers said to my father that, they wanted to speak to me because I was joining the police. So you can imagine he was not happy, to say the least. And he got very upset with me. But to his great wisdom and love for me and his real, positive outlook in the most desperate of things, he said, listen, you're hell-bent on this thing. I'll support you. And he did all the way through. And, I thank him for that.
And what was it like for you? I mean, you've already said about the prejudice that your father had experienced just from a traffic offence. I mean, that's just horrendous. the kind of thing that we just, you hear about on the news and think, how can that possibly happen in this country? What was it like for you then joining the force? Did you experience a great deal of racism? Were you aware of who the officers were who'd beaten up your father?
I didn't know who the officers were. I just didn't want to know, just in case I was working with them. But fortunately, I found out when the civil action came about, literally 6-7 years later, after me joining in 83. So no, it's about 88. So it's about 5 years after joining. I was a sergeant by then. I'd moved from Islington to Enfield. And so I saw those officers at the civil court, and they did look familiar because, you do encounter other officers from different boroughs and different parts of the borough, rather. And I saw them sort of huddling in a corner. And that's when I really saw closing ranks really present itself. And that image of how they huddled together, and I'm thinking what they're trying to say about my father, and I was there in uniform as well to have a visible support for my father. And I don't know what they were discussing, but next minute they capitulated and compensate my father richly. But I mean, you never get full compensation for something like that. But at least it was in his favour.
Yeah. And when you first joined, I mean, how many other non-white police officers were there when you joined the Met in the early 80s?
Not many. There was about 50 or so, and that's across the Met, out of a possible 33,000 cops. So the percentages were very low.
Yeah.
And where I was based in Islington, that was my first borough. It was I was the only one. But because it was my home borough, I knew the area. In fact, I unfortunately had to arrest a couple of my schoolmates because I went to Highbury Grove School. So a few of my peers sometimes were on the receiving end of very appropriate, very intelligence-based policing, I might add. And they really were, showing me how fortunate I was to have the parents that I had. Because, you take these things for granted, having parents, a loving family. It's only when you become someone in the emergency services, you really see people's, living in, harsh circumstances. And you might see them and they look fine, but underneath it all, they're in torment and feeling devalued. And so I recognized the importance of my family and of course my mother, so great, and my wife, all really supportive people to ensure that my approach to policing was not just about enforcement. I recognized the pastoral element of policing. It's around relationships. It's being peacemakers. It's not going in sirens blazing and blue lights flashing. It's actually trying to de-escalate, not escalate things, and really try and solve people's problems. And arrest should be the last resort, but some people think it's the first action you take, and invariably involves some form of taser or ASP or CS spray or whatever, and it shouldn't be like that.
So is this something that you have developed your own idea of policing, or is this something that you were taught? Did you have a mentor? What was it like when you first started? Because I'd imagine you've seen quite a lot of change in your years at the Met. Yeah,
I remember, some of you might remember Dixon Dock Green. It's a really slow moving sort of series of your local Bobby. And he was just, I just liked how he approached it. And so I had that. And also when I was a primary school age, I went to Jamaica for, I went with my mother. She said, right, you and your sister, we're going to Jamaica, as you do. And I was there for a few years, and I saw black cops, in their red and blue seam, looking very athletic. And I could relate to them because they looked like me, and race wasn't an issue. And I really admired how they, were part of the fabric of the community. So those are the sort of images that I really resonate with me. And I remember when I was doing my degree and I was running from one end of the precinct to another, and I saw a black officer, and it was just, one of the side roads in Newham at UEL. And I remember seeing him in his white shirt and dark skin and in a marked police vehicle. I thought, wow, what a brave guy. Really needs to be commended just for his bravery. I didn't say anything to him. I just really admired him from afar. And that I knew then I'm a role model. I have to be not necessarily consummate professional, but I always have to be thinking I'm setting a standard. And not just because I've been trained to do so, but because morally and ethically, as an officer, you should see that as part of your raison d'etre. That is what you do. And it's not like being woke or politically correct or being soft on crime and all that. It just means being a person who everyone should see as a positive person to go for help and hopefully build relationships to make more safer and secure communities.
And did you see that things did start to change within the Met? Did you see that other people were starting to work in that way? Because obviously the Met did have a very bad reputation for a while. How did you see that develop while you were there?
Well, I mean, when I was joining, it was shortly after the Brixton riots and the Starmer report and the need to have a more reflective organisation. And so you did see the opportunities where you stood firm on your values. Because I made it clear that I'm a black man who happens to be a cop. I'm not a cop who happens to be black. And the difference is that you go in with your beliefs and values and you're willing to assimilate, integrate, not assimilate, going to integrate with your team to say, listen, we are mutually working together with respect and dignity for each other. And so we should serve the needs of the community in that fashion. And I saw that was really important to keep my beliefs and values. And the vision of what I wanted to do was to make changes from within, because I knew that there was many black officers in the organisation. We had to make our presence felt and not to be seen as just pointing the finger and not realising there's three fingers pointing back at us. So listen, what are we going to do? I truly believe that was the start. And in the Small Axe film, they say, they showed me saying that in the class, and that was not drama. I actually did say that. The only thing is, some people misinterpreted that as, well, he's a troublemaker. He's got to be watched. He must be some undercover journalist, or maybe he's writing a book. And actually, they were right, because 30 odd years later, I wrote the book.
It just took a very long time for you to get around to writing that book.
Slow burn.
So, well, you mentioned Small Axe. So tell us about this. So I found this really fascinating. I'm sure many people here may have seen this on the BBC. So this was part of Steve McQueen's series Small Axe, and I think yours was called Red, White and Blue. Is that correct? Your episode? I thought it was really fascinating. What was it like to see your life portrayed on screen?
Very surreal, life-changing, and not just for me and Greta, my wife, and Lee John, one of my best friends, and of course my parents. And my sister, unfortunately, passed away only last week. From terminal cancer. Thank you. But just seeing people really close to me being put on a very high profile series, and letting our story be told, and in a way that was very culturally competent and very accurate, and I would say 95% accurate. There was a 5% slip on a bit of drama, but everything in fact was really very precise. In fact, I truly believe Steve McQueen should be a cop. He's got a very forensic eye, and he's laser-like in his interviewing techniques. He is extremely thorough, and he doesn't leave anything to chance.
And he made a comment He made a comment about you. I was amazed and intrigued by the way Leroy had stood his ground and progressed within the Metropolitan Police against so many obstacles, hostility, outright racism, and being repeatedly overlooked for promotion.
Yeah, well, I mean,
when you heard that having that succinct kind of comment about your life as a cop.
yeah, no, I must admit, it again, it was life-changing just to not only work with him, but for him to encapsulate my story and to reflect on it in that way. It is the ultimate compliment. And, you know, I'll be forever grateful, because I didn't join the Met thinking I was going to have a film made about me. When I was in the journey, it was far from being, oh, well, you know, it was that meaningful. I knew it was important work I was doing, but then there was many other people doing really excellent work, not just in policing, but in other public services, private, voluntary sector, etc. So I did feel that when it's being highlighted in that way, that it had to be put across to inspire and to encourage people, because if I can do it, anyone else can do it. And I think it was just you know, just so flattering to have that sort of acknowledgement. And that's why I try and build on that platform in so many ways, working with young people. I'm still working with young people now. The charity I set up 20 odd years ago called Voyage Youth, based in Hackney, and you know, we're doing a lot of great stuff to help our young people to make the right choices, know their rights and responsibilities, positive peer-to-peer mentoring, and you know, become a change agent in their community and not just a victim of its surroundings. So you know, sometimes it really encourages me to just keep going. So public service is still in my DNA. I'm still, you know, doing more hours than I should, but it just keeps me alive. It keeps me at my cutting edge and wanting to do more.
Well, let's go back to those early years at the Met when you realized that things needed to change. What did you decide to do to help bring about change within the Met, not within the community?
Well, as I said, when it was my beliefs and values, I had a clear vision of, well, I need to be very consistent. I need to be as good as everyone else, if not better. And I need to let them, we got to be learning on the job, as it were, respect our different cultures. And so I was doing that on an individual basis. I was going into schools and colleges. I was a bit of a poster boy for recruiting as well, even from training school. So I knew that I could make myself known for the right reasons, and not just the image, but operationally. I was a bit of a sports person as well. So I was Met champion for high hurdles and 400-meter hurdles. So I was really pleased that, you know, even if some people didn't think, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, they had this grudging respect. I was a bit of a spokesman, so I was a sportsman, and they sort of said, well, you know, if he can run that fast, he must be all right. You know, he's a geezer, you know.
And you set up the Black Police Officers Association. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that came about through an initiative that the Met actually started in the summer of 1990, and they were concerned about the excessive wastage of or resignation rate of Black officers. You were 4 to 5 times more likely to be leaving if you're Black than your white counterparts, especially in the first 2 years. So they bussed us down to Bristol, and we were at Bristol Polytechnic doing these seminars. And we literally bled out our veins of emotion and fear and anxiety and distress of what we've been going through the very toxic and hostile culture. And I was part of the those seminars, and I was part of the post-seminar working group, and all these things that really we wanted to capture this and then put it to the management board of the Met. Unfortunately, for all sorts of reasons, it was binned. No one took it any notice. So we owned it, and that caused us to have these Bristol reunions. And actually, I was in Bristol quite recently, and I said to him, "You don't realise it. You're actually the reason why we start the BPA." And
fantastic.
Yeah, the high sheriff of Bristol was pleasantly surprised that we were involved in that way. But the good thing was we kept ownership, and we formed Actually, our founder member meeting was in April '93, about 3 years after the seminars, and it was the same month and year that Stephen Lawrence was killed. So our lives were running parallel, and we realized that we had the timing was so clear to us, and we had this common vision. So our founder member meeting was so clear and concise, and eventually led to our launch in September '94. And we realized that we improved the working environment of Black personnel, so improve the service delivery to the Black community. And it's not at the expense of white community or any communities, but to say, well, listen, we realize there's an issue and we need to address that. And I suppose our coming out party was McPherson in '98, where myself and 2 other members gave evidence at the McPherson inquiry to say the Met was institutionally racist. But again, the finger pointing back at us saying, how do we own it? So we were part of the recruitment, retention, progression elements, and also around service delivery and improving community relations.
And do you find that people feel that the Met has really changed since that McPherson inquiry? Do you think things have got better? Do you think they've got better and then got worse? What is it like now?
Well, I remember massive culture change from '99 when the published report to 2009, because there was independent oversight monitoring the progress of those recommendations, those 70 recommendations. And so it wasn't leaving it to police to mark their own homework, because unfortunately, police are not capable of being objective, because it's a can-do, success-driven organization. So they're more than likely going to say, yep, tick, 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 nothing to worry about here. Let's move on. Unfortunately, they deal with outputs and not outcomes and impact. Unfortunately, the political will has changed in 2010, austerity kicked in, different priorities, the whole equality, diversity, and inclusion piece eroded down to literally maybe an AOB type stuff, not key parts of the agenda. And you found that there was a real enforcement emphasis, and it's just gone from bad to worse on so many fronts. I shouldn't really mention the B word, Brexit. Hate crime went through the ceiling, and there was this hardening and this sort of nationalist agenda that really has made things, for me, it's changed the look and feel of policing. In fact, how we've seen with these WhatsApp groups and this real institutional sexism, misogyny, as well as racism, it's quite clear that the organization and the culture has gone more toxic, and it's got a look and feel, for me, of a pre-McPherson organization. And I don't say that lightly. It really saddens me to say that, because I love the organization, because I know there's nothing bad about the Met that cannot be resolved by what's good in it. And I really believe that. I don't just say it because, it comes off the tongue easily or something. It really is something that I truly believe. It just needs the right ethical leadership, the right accountability and transparency, and the independent oversight to monitor their progress so that they don't live in denial, as we saw in the last few years. Hopefully Mark Rowley, the new commissioner of the Met, will get a grip of this.
That's really good. And I hope that, are you still involved at all? Are you kind of an advisor? I know you've retired from the police force, but are you still an advisor to the Met at all?
Not directly. They let me sneak in the back door from time to time, and I'm giving them the advice. But I'm still a paid up member of the Black Police Association, so it's still around 30 odd years later. They're still doing things. They call on the old guard like me to step up, especially on social media. And I do take real importance in these issues, because it affects every one of us. And I've done advisory work for the National Police Chief Council. I'm still in the real sort of hard-hitting stuff to do with young people and how we make safer and more secure communities. So I'm in the voluntary sector, and also I chair an organization called Transition to Adulthood, working with young people, knowing that neurodiversity and all the issues that some people think, oh, they're 18, they're adults. No, they're still in a stage of development, right up to 25. Some of them are very traumatized. Some of them have some real well-being and mental health issues. So need to recognize that. So I'm really still immersed in this. As I said, public service doesn't sort of tap off. You don't switch off once you retire. It's in your DNA, and I'm really pleased to be able to be relevant. People call on me from time to time, sometimes in the media, but as long as I've got something to say and something to contribute, I will do that, and long may it continue. As long as I've got health and strength, that's the main thing.
And you're one of the founder members, is this right, of the Black Police Association Charitable Trust?
Yes.
What does that do? Tell us about it.
Well, that's the external arm of the charity. I remember setting that up in '98 when I was treasurer in the early stages of the BPA. And everyone said, "Oh, do you need a charity?" I said, "We do, because we don't want to be seen as self-serving. We don't want to be seen, oh, we're just dealing with our members. So we have to, we're part of the Black community. How can we contribute to all communities?" And so one of the first things we did when we set up the charity in '98 was a youth leadership program. In 2000, our first sort of module was at Hendon Training School, when it existed as a training school, a central training hub. And they would go on a week's sort of venture, really, doing all the different activities with the officers and all the physical activities that go with it. And yeah, that charity has now evolved from the BPA Charitable Trust to Void Youth. And in fact, I touched on it before, we're doing work around young people for safer cities, and at BTEC level 2 leadership program they get at year 9, 14 to 15, before they go into their GCSEs at year 10. And now we're also doing young leaders for sustainable cities. So it's around the environmentally friendly thinking of in your community and how you buy into your community, and as well as young leaders for smarter cities. So, we're looking at the future proofing. So yeah, it's great to be able to have that going for the last 20 odd years. And in fact, the current CEO, Paul Anderson, I said it's in the book, but he was one of my worst nightmares in 1985 when I was a rookie cop. Paul and his little crew used to be so annoying, and they just wanted to wind me up and maybe go running around and rolling around with them, just to say, "Oh, we got the local cop upset," but I didn't. And it became banter, and in fact, his input was included in the Steve McQueen Small Axe movie, and he was the one that used to call John Boyega Judas. He used to call me Judas. So it's amazing how those relationships were built in like the early to mid 80s, come to be so useful 30, 40 years later, and we're working together. So it's the importance of relationships and fostering them. It's sometimes the most hostile environment, but if we really cherish them and nurture them, they can stand the test of time.
And exactly what you just said about young people being written off, oh, they're adults, they should take responsibility. A young adult, their brain isn't necessarily fully formed. We had a wonderful neuroscientist, Emma Byrne. Dr. Emma Byrne came on a few months ago, and she was talking about the changes that happen and how, the human brain does not fully develop until, I think it was 25 for women and 27 for men or something. And it was just really fascinating. And of course, in law, over the age of 18, I guess everybody's treated the same. But through the work that you've done, that you actually do need at times to, and I'm sure everybody here who's got children or grandchildren is also aware that you don't just magically become a responsible adult on your 18th birthday. No,
exactly. And to be fair, the politicians are really starting to get their head around this. The practitioners, especially in the prison service, in the penal system, and the court system, are starting to understand this. So it impacts on the sentencing they give, and the way in which they can try and rehabilitate in the prison. So it is getting through. I really think it is the new currency that people are cognizant of and apply in their thinking when dealing with young people nowadays. It's not saying, again, just being soft on them, it's just being a lot more holistic, a lot more understanding, so that you can be a lot more bespoke on what you do, so that the young person doesn't think, oh, yet again, I've been hammered down, no one's listening to me, and they go back to their own old behavior with their old mates and reoffend. So hopefully we're reducing and preventing that.
Which sounds like an amazing project. Now, you mentioned the actor John Boyega. What was it like when did you have any input in the casting, or were you suddenly told this man is going to be playing you? Had you met him before?
I met John many years before. Well, let me say, I didn't know who was going to play me. They mentioned a couple of names, but you know, Steve McQueen, the director, knowing him, that is his choice, no one else's. But I was pleasantly surprised when I heard that John wanted to play me, because he could have had other roles in the other 4 episodes of that 5-episode series. So I was really chuffed that he wanted to play me. And I remember meeting him before filming, and this was like in 2018, because the whole project for me started from 2015, from when they wanted to hear my story from the manuscript, because I was still writing the autobiography at that time. And I remember meeting him in 2018, and it was a summer day, and I was actually telling him things that, you know, he was thinking, so you know me then? I said, no, don't worry, John, I haven't arrested you. It's safe. You know, it's safe, mate. No, what had happened was, the first film called Attack on the Block, my son had gone to the castings for the same role, but he got it. You could see it was a consummate professional. He had his agent, his manager, everything. We knew he'd get it. But my son just rocked up with me and, you know, Gretel and at the castings, and so is he all right then? Oh yeah, he's all right. Anyway, so I remember him from then, and also operationally through the Damilola Taylor investigation. The 2 last people to see Damilola alive before he left the library and skipped away to his death, unfortunately, was John and his sister, because John's sister was in the same class as Damilola Taylor, and John was a bit younger. So they were the last 2 people to talk to him and say, bye, Damilola, see you to school tomorrow. And unfortunately, he never got back home, unfortunately. So when I told John that I was involved in the investigation, and it so happens Gretel, my wife, is related to Richard Taylor, Damilola's dad. They're first cousins, from Lagos, Nigeria. So, you know, there were so many connections there. He, in all honesty, he just felt so at home. He had already done a lot of prep. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff on Google, which I've done over the years. So, yeah, but it was great just to feel at ease and say, listen, I'll just leave it up to you. And you know, the really sad thing, some people said, oh, he's Nigerian. How does he know to talk a Jamaican accent? Can you please leave me alone? You know, it's so petty. I said, listen, if I don't care if they're black, white, whatever, as long as they're genuine, as long as they understand the authenticity, the real truth, the emotional truth. And in fact, Steve Toussaint, who played my dad, I mean, I've got to know him really well because he just lives down the road from me in East London. And I must admit, he played my father so well. That smouldering, passionate man for truth and justice. And yeah, he's a great guy. He's doing all sorts of things, Lord of the Rings stuff, and you know, and so forth. So he's yeah, really great guy. I've got a lot of time for him. So he again shows that Steve McQueen knows his oats. He knows not only just a brilliant cast for all those episodes, but also the crew, great people, consummate professionals. So it was yeah, I never thought I'd be involved in, you know, dropping the name of Steve McQueen and all John Boyega. You know, they're not on Fast Style, but at least I can mention them in my CV.
And what did your wife and your family and your friends think about seeing you portrayed on TV? I mean, it's quite surreal to see your dad, your husband, whatever, on TV as a young man. What was that like?
actually, you know, the most impacted person who spoke to me about it was my grandson, Judah. He's 8 years old. He was about 6 at that time. He said, do you know, I never knew great-great-grandma and granddad because, you know, they only saw them in pictures. And they're like,
Yeah.
gosh, they're still alive. I said, yeah, their spirit is still alive. You know, they're
Oh, that's so
working
sweet.
through Steve Toussaint and others. And that for me was so amazing, just to have those conversations. And so as long as I've got kudos from my grandchildren, I'm not too fussed about anything else. And if there's anything, as I said, it was life changing, seeing those conversations. And I think one of the things that really touched me with John was those silent moments. You know, when you see him looking at his uniform for the first time hung up, or the first time seeing himself dressed in his uniform, or when he's had a real tough time in the station, you know, maybe someone hasn't backed him up and all this sort of stuff, which again was very accurate. I didn't realize I did those silent moments. And when I was watching it, even the BFI were running it again last year, late 2021. And this time it's on massive screens. And this is the beauty of how Steve, he actually filmed it, not digitally, but on old-fashioned, good quality film, so that when it scales up to when, like, John Boyega is 15 feet tall, type thing, the clarity is just amazingly, there's no granularity, it's just spot on. And then that just had a double whammy on me. And all those silent moments, well, wow, I thought, gosh, I didn't realize I'd gone through so much of that. But yeah, it really just got me thinking how fortunate I am, and really how to build on that. And the family, you know, getting their opportunities to say their story's been told. And it's there to inspire and hopefully let other people understand how important their stories are. And don't think, oh, you know, I'm just an ordinary person. No, your story can be so important. And I've found so many people responding to that message.
It's absolutely true. I write biography and people always say, oh, you know, it's got to be someone famous. No, it doesn't at all. It just has to be someone interesting. And everybody's lives are so, you know, reality is so interesting. So let's talk about autobiography. I've just put a link in the chat. So this is, as I say, the hardback. It's now out in paperback. Tell us about why you wanted to write Closing Ranks and what it was that first kind of kickstarted you into the writing process.
Well, I realized when I was leaving or retiring in 2013, I'd already, the strange thing is when you join the Met, any police service, one of the first dates they give you is the date of leaving. It's really strange. So I knew my exit date was June 2013. So it was like 2010, I was part of the Olympic Security Command. So I knew my sort of final operational work was the 2012 Olympic Games, finishing that and then retiring the following year. So I started to think exit strategy, you know, how do I process all of this stuff? And so I started to get a structure on just the chronology of everything. I wish I was a person that could write these diaries and my emotions and everything, but I've really got a good way of sort of going back into the moment, and so many different events that I captured in bullet point. I could really go into the moment, and I thought to myself, this needs a title. And I remember that image of those officers when my father's been at the civil court, and now they were in that corner, and I said, closing ranks at the expense of truth and justice, and it just resonated with me, and it just kept walking with me. And each time I added to the drafts, I multiple drafts of it, it just, closing ranks just said, that's it. So once I got that sort of concept, and it's not to say it's all about bad cops doing stuff, but it was also about how good cops can challenge the bad cops, whatever it may be, corruption, racism, sexism, etc., and how we need to improve the organization and let it be told what the culture's like. You know, the culture's not all bad. You know, it is a culture that, you know, when you're working together, when everyone's running away from danger, we step in. We have to be consummate professionals. You know, I've seen the Met and other police services, Team Met, it can be second to none in all over the world when it comes to policing in emergency situations. Even the Olympics, I was proud to be a part of, not just in London, but nationally, to make that a success and making people feel, yeah, this is showing GB team, London, you know, UK, PLC, the whole 9 yards, showing it in its real magnificence, and it won the best Olympic Games because of that.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
I thought I want to show all sorts of aspects of where I've been fortunate to work with people, and some of those people, they may think, oh, they're not that important, but they are, and showing the importance of how that can build onto other things. And I just needed to let it be known. And as I said, it got captured by Steve McQueen, so it just had this extra meaning. And I'm really pleased that I did it. But I wanted my voice. It had to have my authentic voice. And I had a ghostwriter, George Luke, great guy, great, sit me down and really just talking it through. But you know, once he had captured everything, I just had to reinvigorate it with my voice. If there's anything I've learned, and I'm not, you know, skilled author, and I'm going to take up some of your points around, you know, next steps, you know, Society of Authors, you know, plug. I'm definitely going to follow that up. You know, I'm really, it's so important that genuine voice is heard, and it resonates, and I think that's what made doing the Audible version really important, because if I didn't hear my voice, I couldn't really just talk through, you know, 250 odd pages, just rattling it off. It wouldn't be authentic. And even though it's one of the toughest things I've ever done, doing an Audible version, same intensity.
Oh, really hard, yeah.
Oh, it's the toughest thing I've ever done. But yeah, for me, it really helped to have my inner voice. And I think that's what comes out in any sort of book that I read, is just hearing the author's voice from within, a spiritual voice. And obviously, if I listen to them audibly, it's even better.
I'm going to put the link to Audible in the chat here. Have you had some great feedback? Have people come to you since the book came out and said that it has affected perhaps their decision to go into the police force, or has it just given people a chance to see, as you said, see a role model that they may not have seen before? Oh
yeah, I mean, I've been so blessed by so many people. I've said, you know, it made all the difference for me joining the organization. I even had one quite recently. He's a sergeant. He's not in the Met, and he's going for a promotion. And he read the book, and he said it just inspired him just to keep going, because he was thinking of leaving, and because he got a few knockbacks going for promotion. And you know, he also read you know, Steve McQueen's Forward, and that really helped him. You know, all these sort of things. And I thought, wow, you know, that's what it's about. You know, if anyone can relate to it, and it's not just cops, I might add, you know, people in different professions and different callings have actually said it's a relatable story. That's why I didn't want it to be all management speak, and you know, I did investigations, and you know, I led this and I led that. I wanted it to feel like this. It's the themes, the human story is got the, I think the vulnerability piece is really important, and people could identify with that as well. So it wasn't about me sort of, you know, on my golden steed running towards danger. No, it was really just to be real with people, and I've been really encouraged by that. And it's you know, and young and old. And I'll close with this. I was at an event in Tower Bridge, and it was National Black Crown Prosecution Service, annual dinner type thing. I was one of the speakers there, and this young man came up to me afterwards, and he was from a certain part of South London, and he says, and forgive my accent for anyone who can't understand it. You know what I mean, blood? I really can't stand Fed, but I don't mind talking to you. So basically, even though he still thinks I'm a police officer, and he would never talk to a police officer, but I'll talk to you, and he put the photographs we took together, he put it on his Instagram thing, Wow, I've arrived, and I was speaking to Greg McKenzie. He used to be part of the BBC. He runs this program where this young man is part of, and I said, Greg, I got the ultimate compliment from one of your young people when he said, I don't talk to feds, but I'll talk to.
And you've mentioned social media. You're really active on social media, and I've put your social media handles in the chat here. So do you think that that's really helpful? And for those of you who are listening, by the way, it's at Leroy Logan 99. Do you think it's been really helpful at getting the message across? Do you think that social media has a really positive? We know we always hear about all the negative points of social media, but do you find there are positives as well?
Oh, absolutely. I really think that like everything, social media is a force for good, but it's got some real toxicity to it. But I think it's really important. In fact, let me just say, my Twitter account, Leroy Logan 999, please do not report crime on my Twitter feed, right? It's only there to say I'm still proud to mention that I'm part of the emergency services, or used to be anyway. So don't report any crime or expect police to respond to my Twitter feed, because I don't. But no, I think if you can get through the rush and tumble of social media, it is, especially Twitter. It can be so important to those wider audiences that you normally might not engage in, and it can come at you in so many different ways, and it's a way of sharing your thinking and people having that discourse with you. And it's sort of, touches my heart when people go out their way just to send a message, whether it's on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook Messenger, whatever it may be. It really touched my heart when so many people say, just want to say it was really important to hear from you, or read your book, or see the film, whatever it may be. And I just can't thank them enough for taking time. And some of it, I just, like, I'm speechless. So yeah,
I think that pretty much sums up social media.
Say it again.
I think that pretty much sums up social media.
Yeah,
amazing, but then at other times it leaves you speechless.
Yeah.
So you mentioned retiring, which makes me laugh, in 2013, because you really you might have retired from the police force, but you certainly haven't retired. And am I right? You've taken up a new challenge. You've started studying recently. Do you have time to tell me about that?
I'm doing. Well, I've always been a person that I'm always motivating myself. And some people say, you'll motivate yourself out of your coffin if you carry on this way, because if Lazarus can do it, I can do it. Anyway, it ends up that I've always had a interest in theology. And how it started was, again, when I was talking about when I went to Jamaica in primary school age. And so I'm in Spanish Town, and I've got this really strong London accent. And people in those days, so this is in the early 60s, yeah? And the only time they used to hear an English accent was white people on a cinema screen. And all of a sudden, they had this young black boy looks like them with his London accent, So they used to pay me. They used to pay me to talk. Now, I couldn't take it on ethical reasons, so I used to hold church. And so I used to have them in the compound, and I would talk church to them. So I was, quoting scripture, etc. And then the hat would go round, the collection hat. And so we would go and buy, coconut and mangoes and all these sort of things. So they used to call me Deacon. And my mother used to call me Deacon as a sort of, don't forget Leroy, you said Deacon. I said, all right. And so even when I got back, she'd remind me from time to time, about holding church in the compound in Spanish Town. So, but I've always, you know, as I said, that pastoral care in policing has always resonated with me. Is, you know, in the Beatitudes, you know, blessed are the peacemakers. It doesn't say police officers, it says peacemakers, because they're sons and daughters of God. And that's always resonated with me. And I must admit, it came about, it sort of crystallized this time last year. I was in a bit of a wilderness period, you know, spiritually, and I changed church, and I went to this church. It's part of the Holy Trinity Brompton network. It's called Saint in Hackney, and I just identified with the fellowship. Really vibrant, so diverse, so loving, and they have a 4-day retreat up in Newton-on-Trent, in just outside Nottingham, and they had this. It's called Focus, and I went to Focus with Gretel, and I remember they were talking about different forms of fast tracking into theology, and one of them is called the Caleb stream. And Caleb, for those of you know from the Bible, actually responded to his ministry at the age of 85. Now, I've still got 20 odd years to go. Actually, it's 20 years. But I thought, actually, you know, when they described it, the sort of people they're looking at, you know, public servants, retired, and then my wife was looking at me, and you know, still active in the church, and she looked. I said, "What are you looking at me for?" And you know, she said, "Didn't they used to call you deacon at school at you know, in Jamaica? Didn't they?" Gretel, no, please don't start. But you know, the amazing thing, it planted a seed in me, and I started to feel, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I'm starting to feel the same sort of calling as I did in 1982 when I was joining the police service. You know, applying to. So here we are, 40 years later. I've still got that calling and that sense of desire and the vision of the journey's continuing. So, you know, the policing to priesthood journey is there. So that's my hashtag P2P, from policing to priesthood. So yeah, I'm on this journey. I love the reflective thinking, the critical thinking, the reflective practices, you know, and it's the interfaith elements of it I find so fascinating. And yeah, this time next year, you know, I might walk around with a dog collar instead of this paisley shirt, you know.
Well, I hope you'll still wear the shirt with the dog collar. Don't stop wearing it.
I might be trying to do some fashion things. So, you know, I used to do fashion modeling, so I might bring in some, you know, get Oswald Boateng to line me up a few things. You know?
I think that sounds fabulous. Please don't change, Leroy.
No. You know, that's the thing. You know, because I'm going through this discernment process as well. You know, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not the type of person who's going to be this really thoughtful and very reflective person who's really going to, you know, I'm going to be, come on, let's keep it real. You know, don't dilute anything.
That's what we need.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm
already had a comment saying that was inspiring. So there you are. You've inspired someone already.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Thank you.
That's what it's all about.
Saying what an inspiration. Look at this. You're inspiring all our Goldster members.
Oh wow. I'll have to come back.
You will have to come back. You have to come back when you're on your new journey.
Absolutely. When I'm ordained, I'll come back.
We would love that, Leroy. Thank you so much. You have been absolutely wonderful. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you today. And I know it's been a tough time in your life recently. So thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind just waiting for 1 minute while I tell everybody what is coming up on Goldster.
Yep.
So we've got our next PPG is with the wonderful Rosie Stancer, who, as you all know, is herself an explorer. And she's going to be interviewing Neil Lawton, who is a really important motivational speaker, and like Rosie, he's also worked on explorations and team development. He's a former army officer, entrepreneur and adventurer, as he's described on his website. And then going to the book club, you're back with Humphrey on Thursday, and he is interviewing Professor Samir Gray, who's become quite a popular name on Goldster, I know. He's reframing the public conversation about getting old, and the co-author of 2 witty books, Sod 60 and Sod 70, both subtitled The Guide to Living Well. And he's going to come and talk to you all about his latest news. And then on Friday, the 23rd of December, I cannot believe we're this close to Christmas, I'm going to be interviewing Jeremy Seal. Some of you may remember him, the travel writer. He came on probably about 18 months ago now. He's coming on to talk to us this time about his biography of St. Nicholas. And of course, as we all know, St. Nicholas has a great connection with Christmas. And just to remind you that this month's book of the month is with Humphrey on the 30th of December, and it is Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. So if you've watched the film as well, that's great, but it is quite different from the book. It's a wonderful book, I would say, read it. And just a quick heads up that this is our January book of the month with me, Muriel Spark, the prime of Miss Jean Brodie. I know this was asked for specifically by a Goldster member, so I hope that they're there today. I'm very pleased that we do listen to what you say. I've also got a little bit of news. For those of you in the UK, I'm on TV tonight. 9 o'clock on Channel 4. It's called Miriam's Dickensian Christmas. And I'll be on it for like this much of it. But it's Miriam Margolyes Discovering Christmas Spirit, and me talking to her about Dickens and the original message of A Christmas Carol. Please do watch it or record it if you're going out and having fun. But 9 o'clock, Channel 4, Miriam's Dickensian Christmas. So thank you, everybody. I will look forward to seeing you on Friday. Leroy, you've been an absolute joy. And there are so many lovely comments coming in. Really interesting to hear you speak so well about the job. I'm guessing that's a fellow police officer. Thank you for all that you continue to do to help make society fairer. Truly inspirational. Fabulous interview. Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. So lots of great comments here. Leroy, have a wonderful Christmas. Take care of yourself. And everybody else, I will see you on Friday. Bye.